CONORAD alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
For 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is October the 30th, 2023, and this is episode 391 of Workshop Radio. And guys, it's going to be a good one tonight. I got my buddy Will waiting in the wings. He is in the green room eating M&Ms and, of course, only the blue ones because he requested that in his rider before we started. But we're going to have him on in just a minute. Yes, probably only the second time we've had a filmmaker on here, so I'm kind of excited. He's going to come on and share some of his ups and downs and journey and a lot of his favorite horror, because this will be the third Halloween-themed episode because we're quickly heading from ghouls to Santa Claus. So real quick, let's get the announcements out of the way, guys. Number one, you want to support the workshop and the things that I do. I'm a big fan of value for value exchange, and the easiest way to do that is to sign up for the Patch of the Month Club. That's patchofthemonth.co, not .com. If you go there, it won't show up. .co, $10 a month, $100 a year. You get a patch just like it's on my hat every single month. But more than that, it's a way to support what I do and keep the lights on and the generators fueled up. We got I see Spags over there. Good to see you. And by the way, folks, we are on a completely different evening because we wanted to get one more spooky episode in. Number two, I get asked tons of the time, Tim, do you recommend blah, blah, blah? Tim, do you have a product used for this? Do you? Yeah. Yes. The answer is probably. toolmantim.shop. Go there and you'll see I've got, right now, it's about a couple hundred products that I've reviewed. I've got the links up. And if you pick something up through the Amazon shop, you're all set. And then one more quick thing, guys. I know it's 2 months away. Well, I don't know. We're getting close to Christmas. But last year, I wanted to start a new Christmas kind of theme for the show. Everybody else, you know, my good friend Nicole from Living Free in Tennessee, she does the night before Christmas from all across the world. And I thought, what could we do here that would fit this kind of our thrust of this channel? And I came up with it. Took me some digging, but there is an episode of King of the Hill. Stick with me here, guys, for just a minute, from 1999 called Hillenium. And it is the entire King of the Hill crew getting ready for the Y2K bug. Love the episode, but more than that, I took the script, I turned it into an audio podcast, and I thought, it's okay. But how could we up it this year? And what I decided was we're going to get members of the community, fellow delinquents, to do the voices. And I have tons of people signed up for all the voices already, except, now these are tough. One of them's easy. Random obnoxious computer store worker. So if you're interested in that voice, let me know. But the one I'm really looking for is a boomhauer. That one can be tricky. I know. I try to do boomhauer, but I'd probably have to be drunk or something. Anyway, reach out to me, therealtimcook@gmail.com, or just let me know in the Telegram group, because will I do them? Sure, I'll do them, but I would love to put it together with 100% delinquent participation. So with that, guys, give me 1 second here. Let's bring on Will. How are you, Will?
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. Great. Is this our Christmas, Halloween? Christmas.
Well, yeah. It's I guess you could say that. It's probably my favorite holiday of the year.
Me too. I don't know, when we were kids, Halloween was fun, you know, but people didn't decorate so much. You know, everybody did their costumes and stuff. There was always the odd house that decorated, but now it seems to be one of those things that people jump into just every bit as much as Christmas, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, right. I think I was always into making my own costume to some degree, you know, but it seems like now there's, what Spirit Halloween, is in every town, and it's a huge industry now, like Christmas, I guess. But
do you remember any of what was your favorite do-it-yourself Halloween costume when you were a kid? I like that. That's good.
Oh, well, I did one. I had this character that I drew. I used to do like comics when I was in like middle school, high school, and I had this character that was like this smiley face, just kind of silent, creepy character. So I dressed up like that one year, and I found it was an interesting experiment because it was like the most unsettling, like scary, character, just because I was completely silent all night. I just had a card that said trick or treat, and on the other side said thank you, and the people I was trick or treating with just got progressively more creeped out over the course of the evening, even though they were friends and family.
Why don't you share with us, because I don't know if many people in the workshop would know who Will is unless you've been to. Okay, I'm going to back up. You can tell when we first met. I think I remember, but I call him my supplier of Christmas juice. So how did we first meet, Will, and then get into your story a little bit?
I think the Christmas juice was the key. So it was at SRF the last fall. So the Christmas juice, first of all, the official name is it's Nocino. It's an Italian liqueur that a friend of mine turned me on to. He found his grandpa's old recipe and he shared it with a couple of friends of mine and we've been making batches of it the last few years. And so I brought some to share and you seem to like it pretty well. And
let's just say I took a shining to it.
Yeah, everybody that tries it seems to love it, and it's really fun. There's a whole lore around it and tradition and stuff I won't get into, but you make it in the summer, and it's usually ready around Christmas time, and then you kind of it develops as it sits for 2-3 years. It just gets better and better, but. We've been, my friends and I, we've been adding like odd, adulterations, I guess, and doing a lot of experimenting with the base recipe, and that's been really fun. We get together and have a big group tasting a couple times a year, but it's fun to like introduce it to new people.
It would be a liqueur. Would I be wrong to say it's kind of a clove-based liqueur?
It's really, I think, the clove is probably the strongest flavor, but it has its main identity, I would say, is walnut. Like that's kind of the key ingredient. It's black, like, so it's actually it's kind of appropriate for Halloween too, I guess. It looks like a nice dark, but it tastes like Christmas. So, but it's clove, cinnamon, lemon peel, walnut. So it's just, it's a really interesting, warm, kind of, festive.
Oh yes. Get you feeling festive pretty quick.
Yeah.
So because we also discovered at this Self-Reliance, I think that we have a mutual love for film and horror film in general, which is awesome. So where did your kind of love for film start? Where did that kick off? Well,
it's always been, my mom was always really into movies, renting. Well, so I'm a child of the 80s, so as soon as VHS hit the scene, I guess my mom, I think she even worked at a video rental store, so we were like always, when having a VCR wasn't common, we would borrow the one from the store, I think, and bring home some tapes. And I started in particular with horror early, like probably my earliest film memory. I think, my earliest theater memory was seeing Ghostbusters in the theater.
Oh yes.
And crying when the librarian rushed it, because I was 4 or 5 years old or whatever, but I remember it fondly. Aside from that, and then at home, I remember again when I was 5, probably 4 or 5, maybe 6. Watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 on VHS at home with my mom and my aunt, who is just like 3 years older than me, and eating burritos and just, I mean, my mom would always say, don't, this is all, make believe. That's just makeup. That's just, special effects. It's not real. And so it was just a fun time, especially a movie like that. It is so crazy, and it is funny.
Absolutely. I just wanted to mention, there might be, when you move around, your mic wires might be rubbing on. They're just making not a big deal, but I figured we'd catch it before we got too far into it. So,
oh, absolutely.
For the record, my first movie I ever saw was VHS. Same thing. We went and rented a VCR, and this is not nearly as cool, but it was Ernest Goes to Camp.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. No, that's great. I love the Ernest movies. Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
No, I was going to make a stupid dad joke. I was going to say he was really earnest in his roles, wasn't he?
Yes,
so
yes. Yeah. Well, and you guys mentioned him on that, last episode. I think Ernest Scared Stupid, I think, came up.
Yes.
And yeah, I think whatever year that came out, I was maybe 14. That was my birthday. Went to the theater, see Ernest Scared Stupid. Went out to dinner. And
Another one I've never seen. I've heard it's great for kids and a lot of fun. But some people say it might have been his best film, which, probably isn't saying a ton, but that's neither here nor there now, is it? So, So where did it go? I mean, geez, you couldn't, if you started on Texas Chainsaw Massacre at 5 years old, where do you go from there?
Well, so another very early memory around that time, I don't think she could even get it at the video store, but she had a friend that had all these, crazy movies. She got a copy of Evil Dead, the first one.
Oh, yes.
And I remember that was too intense for her. Like we didn't finish watching it, and of course I was pretty freaked out too because she was freaked out. But and later, now, Sam Raimi and the Evil Dead movies are, some of my favorites. My favorite is the second one because I think it's like the perfect balance of the horror and the comedy, which I love that.
They kind of figured it out at that point. I mean, if you ever hear the story of the making of I'm sure you have, but for the sake of other people, it was an unbelievable source. They were, maxing out credit cards, taking out loans. The story goes that they may or may not have even burnt down the cottage at the end. Who knows? But they were learning as they went. And I love them. And
and
have you seen the new one?
No, I haven't. I saw like 10 plus years ago, there was that kind of remake or reboot.
Yes.
I saw that one, but I haven't seen any of I think, has there been 2 since then?
So the latest one just came out this summer and it was Evil Dead Rises. And it was, so good. It was as good. It really fell into the vein of over the top gore, blood everywhere, but also humor involved. So nice. It was, yeah.
Yeah. I think all the trailers seemed like it didn't highlight any of the humor. I think
it was maybe, it might not have been quite as funny as say the second of the original, but it was, I laughed in many occasions and it was, it was definitely more over the top. Like the last one was just pure gore. It almost felt like it was coming into like hostile territory, almost just, violent for the sake of violence. Right. Whereas this one definitely, at least to me, held on to the spirit of it for sure.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I definitely need to check that out. I have been kind of running myself ragged for the last few years and I hardly watch anything anymore. Like all my references are, 15 years old.
That's okay.
And all my favorite movies are from the 70s and 80s. So,
I want to hear about those, but I want to hear, because you sent me a couple of short films that you filmed, close to 15 years ago now, was it? Or
yeah. Okay. Well, and I guess kind of getting back to, my journey or whatever. I was always a movie fan. Actually, one kind of cool thing that again, just kind of going back to childhood, we traveled a lot. And one thing, when we would be sitting somewhere for a long time waiting for, whatever, my mom would tell us stories. She would recount the plots of movies as if she was, like telling the story. And I remember, being in, like on a layover in an airport somewhere and she told us the whole plot to The Shining, and I remember the year that Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade came out. We had seen the trailer and then we had gone off on this trip and we couldn't see the movie. So we all just told each other our, what we imagined the movie would be. We made up our own version of it based on the trailer, and like I always loved that, and I feel like, that probably contributed to me, like wanting to become a director and a writer and stuff, because we were kind of creating these stories in our minds. And that's kind of, how I operate. I see everything, before it goes up.
That makes sense. That's cool. I like that idea. That's something kids wouldn't do today. Today we'd want to have, a full movie outline and spoilers and everything else. But I like that, trying to base your story on what the trailer says. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And so anyway, I didn't really do I didn't have a camera like until I got one as a graduation present when I graduated from high school, and it was a VHS-C,
Yes.
So pretty low quality. But we immediately, I had actually already written a script with a friend of mine. And we tried to borrow my mom's camera, but it got broken. And we had this other friend that was always shooting stuff, so we were making stuff, but I never had much creative control, and we mostly were just improvising things. But our first actual script was actually going back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I don't know how we decided to do it, but and this is back in the day when you'd get, 7 movies for $7 for 7 days or whatever, those video rental deals. And we would, of course, that would be our whole weekend. We'd get the, 7 movies on Friday, and we'd watch them all by Saturday. And we just, and he was like, this guy, he's like one of my main collaborators, and best friends throughout high school. And we started a band, and, and we're still good friends, but he was like kind of very sheltered. He wasn't allowed to watch horror movies or anything growing up. And so I was a bad influence, and I introduced him to all this stuff. And I guess I think it was probably his idea. We were going to remake the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but we were going to make it a comedy and more gory. And so I watched it frame by frame, with the pause button on the VCR, and I wrote down by hand, longhand, every shot, every piece of dialogue, and and then we typed it up. And when we typed it up, we added a bunch of scenes that were our sort of comedy scenes that were just kind of interspersed.
Okay.
And in our version, Franklin was the main character. He's the guy in the wheelchair. And it's Franklin and Sally, her brother, sister, and then there's Kirk and Pam, are the other 2 teens that are, get killed. And our version it was this bizarre, surreal thing. And we ended up shooting all of our original scenes, and we never shot any of the recreation scenes or the remake scenes. And Leatherface and none of the family actually showed up in the version that we shot. So it was like Franklin and Sally and Kirk and Pam, as kids, just getting into bizarre situations, and they all did end up dying, but in very different ways.
Does that still exist anywhere, or did it just kind of go away? I have it on a VHS tape, okay. I've got the file somewhere, but it's not, I never put it out online or anything. That's a lot of the stuff I shot, it just never went anywhere because I was making stuff, pre-YouTube, and it just never made the, transition to digital, I guess. So did you take any, so you said college or university days, did you go for filmmaking at all, or what did you end up taking?
That was what I wanted to do. And I went to, I ended up going to art school, and the year that I got there, the semester I started, they had shoved all the film cameras into a closet, and they said, we're going digital. And I specifically asked, can I just get one of those out and play with it? And they're like, nope, it's all digital. And, they put in these, computer labs, and they had a couple of, GL2s, which was it was a mini DV pre-HD camera. It was a Canon, pretty nice camera, but it was in that transition period where there was like the whole thing about like, well, film will never die because video looks like crap, but they were trying to push in that direction, like,
What year was that?
2000,
I was
2001.
going to, so 28 days later, do you remember that?
Yes.
That was
yes.
what, the first full film on digital?
Yes, that was shot on a Canon XL2, which was like 3 generations after the GL2. And I actually had one of those. And that was kind of what I was shooting on, because I was like, okay, well, they did it. That's
Sure.
good. That's good enough quality. And then quickly, as soon as the HD cameras started coming out, it was not anymore. But
it's like a time capsule. I mean, that it suited that film for sure.
Yeah.
Like you go back and watch it. I mean, we'll never have an HD copy of it simply because, or it's close to it because what we have. But that one, I always remember it as that grainy. It almost looked like watching a VCD or a DivX rip or something, Yeah. But that was the appeal of it. But
right.
I'm glad that they didn't shoot a whole shit ton of films, because it'd be like Star Trek: The Next Generation, where a lot of that doesn't exist on film, and they go back and try to upscale it, and you're like, boy, that's going to be a job.
Yeah. But that, and actually, and another one that sort of was in the transition period, but a little later, was Cloverfield, the original Cloverfield.
Yes.
It's the found footage thing. And I remember when the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, this is terrible, but going back, I think it holds up better now if you go back, and because I think at the time the shaky cam and the POV, was disorienting, and it just didn't make sense. But now, like, everything is that way. That's what's on the internet. That's like the language of motion media now. Like it just looks like normal.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's true. We were used to a fairly steady kind of picture in frame, whereas it went, because now, I mean, oh my God, my kids, I love them to death, but they're used, I'm kind of used to it, but just get Charlotte on FaceTime for a minute and it's, like this, and I love her, but they're just used to the entire world moving 24/7.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I was trying to combat back then. Because there's the visual language of film, the old cameras, they're like 40 pounds, the film cameras. So they move like this. It's a solid, slow, methodical movement. There's a weight to it. But a phone, it just twists, and even a camcorder, there's no weight. So that's one of the kind of giveaways. It makes it feel cheap, and it just doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like a home video, at least at that time. But like I said, now it's changed, and it's just normal. People don't really think about it that way anymore.
That's true. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially going back, I mean, early 80s and further back, it was just heavy gear, I suppose, at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, and actually that reminds me, sorry, I'm like,
no, you're good.
From the last show, you were talking about Hitchcock, and there's that movie with the two that had the body in the trunk.
Yes.
It's called Rope.
That's it. And it's got buddy from It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart.
So good.
It is. Yeah, it's probably my favorite Hitchcock movie, and that's one of the things. They shot it in color, which was kind of novel at the time. And the color camera, I guess my understanding is that it was so large they had to have it on a track, and it kind of moved back and forth. They couldn't have a camera operator because it was this huge machine. And so it's a technical, it's very impressive, as a film nerd, because one of the gimmicks in that movie is that it was one continuous shot, which wasn't actually possible at the time, because a film canister only lasted 20 minutes.
Right.
So there are all these if you know what you're looking for, they're not that subtle, but they have all these sort of like wipes, like where somebody will approach the camera and it goes white for a second and then they move away. And that was when they would change film canisters. But that's a great movie, great suspense. And
I never thought about it, but having a fixed camera that can only move back and forth kind of adds to the claustrophobia bit of that show, of that as well, because even though you've got a kitchen, kind of a living room, and then the back bedroom, but that's all there was. And they just kind of back and forth, and you can feel them just getting more and more anxious and antsy. And if anybody hasn't seen it, I'm glad. Thank you for remembering. It's Rope, guys. And it really, I don't know. Yeah, it's maybe his best pure film. It's really good, but
Yeah, and actually, I guess kind of a little aside, I just yesterday finished a stage production of Harvey. Speaking of Jimmy Stewart,
really,
yeah, I was played Dr. Sanderson. That's actually why I cut my hair. If you remember, I had long hair at SRF just a couple weeks ago.
Yes, I like Jimmy Stewart. I don't know. I know a lot of people accused him of overacting, but I just thought his I liked his approach to it. Like, you know, his that what do they call it? The mid-Atlantic accent or whatever. He had a bit of that. So
yeah.
So we got both. We're at digital video in university. Where'd it go from there?
Okay, yeah. So so we shot some of this Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing. We worked on that for a couple, I don't know, year or two. And meanwhile, I got into more, well, because there was no film department, what I was in was called the new media department.
Oh, anyways, go ahead.
Which means nothing really, or anything. And that's, so I got distracted. I ended up getting into like, I was already into graphic design, but I got into like more interactive multimedia. I was like a Flash master, Action Script 2.0. I didn't make the jump to 3.0, but I made some really cool like interactive videos that like I don't know. I had a minor like brush with celebrity there, you know. It was like a really interesting thing where I used the Action Script to put this interactivity into some videos I was making. But one of the issues is, you know, bandwidth at the time. Like it was like a tiny little, you know, window, and it still took, you know, 15 minutes to load. It was intended to be, you know, an online thing, but I was just kind of I was ahead of the technology, and I would set it up like in a gallery on a little pedestal thing, but people just didn't understand how to interact with it, and it was a great concept, but it didn't really, and like the arty people understood it and were like super excited, but it didn't really translate. You know, it wasn't very accessible. So, you know, but so anyways, I guess the point is I was kind of distracted on some like experimental stuff, and I was doing like installations and like working with electronics and you know, more experiential stuff. And I didn't do a lot of filmmaking through college, aside from those like little short experimental things. But then I did a stop motion animation. That was like my senior project, which was just kind of came out of nowhere, really. I was just sitting in class, kind of bored one day, and I doodled these two ragdoll characters, like one of them throwing up, and the piece like with a piece of cake laying there, and I was like, that's funny, and I'll make an animation about this. And yeah, that was like the whole basis, and that's one of the ones I sent you was the Too Much Cake. Brown Bag Funnies presents episode 2, Too Much Cake, in the tradition of George Lucas, making the episode 2 before the first one.
I was wondering that, yes. Yeah. And well, it was, what is it, 4 minutes, something like that, anyway.
Yeah.
Did the male raggedy guy, did he die too?
No.
I mean, he didn't in the movie, but he did puke. So I was like, I think maybe just a little.
Yeah. That was like a little misdirection. Like he just pukes, and then they're like, oh no. And then, well, I mean, no spoilers.
I get it. Yeah.
Go see it. But that one actually, that went to a couple festivals, and I won best visual effects. Actually, I don't know if you could tell. I mean, the resolution isn't great. I was shooting on low quality video and stuff, but I actually green screened a lot of stuff, like the backgrounds in that. I was playing with chroma keying and stuff, so it was sort of a technical exercise as well as doing the animation. Because it's, the idea was like this infinite space, but the floor is brown paper bags, like grocery bags. And so I couldn't really create that in.
So how did you, I figured the rest was stop motion, and some people can be like, why are they even talking about this? But I got to ask. Yeah. So the vomit, what was that? And how did you do it?
Okay. Yeah. So so the whole thing, I did not plan. I didn't have a script. I kind of just did it, and I just kind of figured it out as I went. which is kind of how I enjoy doing filmmaking, though it's not realistic to do larger scale projects that way. But it was gel wax, which I'm sure you can still get it just at Walmart. It's like clear, and you can melt it into a candle or whatever. You put like seashells in there or whatever. So I melted down the gel wax with a little bit of clay, and well, I think initially when the male character, when Raggedy Randy throws up, it's cake colored. So I actually took some of the clay from the cake and melted it into the wax to color it. And then what I did is I just stuck a little piece of like a straight pen in his face where his mouth would be. And I hung the gel wax from it. And then I would just twist it a little bit.
Okay.
Each frame would twist, so it would get a little bit of a light, reflection, and it gave it that movement. And it was just a straight piece of wax or of gel, that would. And I think I even put little chunks of cake in there. And then, of course, with Raggedy Fran, it became colored red as she continued vomiting. And then, of course, it transitioned from being the wax to being the batting, the cotton
and it
stuff.
Cracked me up.
Yeah.
So I absolutely remember the name of the other one, but your Italian influenced short.
Yeah. Keepsake.
Dude, that was really good. I know you don't need to hear that, but it was really good. Like that, especially the ending. And I mean, I know it's, again, what was it, 4 to 6 minutes, but I just loved it. The show playing on TV was that real, or did you film or did you make up the evangelical pastor guy too?
That was real. That was like a crazy coincidence, or what's the other thing they say? I don't know.
Kismet or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So we shot that over a weekend at a friend of mine's house. Well, we had 3 locations. Like the main interior was at a friend's house, and then there was the exterior, like the opening, the title sequence, which actually won an award for it at a film festival too, was at another location, and then there was another interior, actually, where that was at another friend's house. But anyway, so we shot for 2 days at the main interiors at the one friend's house where the lady gets killed and stuff. And then we were going to wrap up shooting the interiors at the other place with the TV, with that being on the TV on the Sunday morning. And I just got up at 4:30 because I was like, okay, I'm going to record. I just turned on the religious channel, and I was thinking, maybe I'll get lucky. And that came on. My other plan was I was just going to have the TV like on a blue screen, and I was just going to composite in something.
Sure.
As a backup, something, and maybe we were just going to, film something ourselves or whatever. But that was so perfect. I actually set up my camera in my living room and filmed it off the TV because I didn't have anything connected to the TV to record it. And then we actually just hooked the camera up to the TV at my friend's house where we shot that and played it back and just had him walk past it. But yeah, it was so ridiculously, appropriate, for the whole,
It had Dawn of the Dead remake vibes, where there's, if you've seen that one, where there's always a TV playing in the background, or they use news footage to kind of fill in the story, or maybe just creep the atmosphere a little bit. And I loved it. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was good.
And that one, the way that whole film came about was my friend whose house we shot the TV part in. He is a huge horror buff. And he was, at the time, he was really into the Italian giallo slasher kind of the Mario Bava, Argento.
It's the only one I know, so I got to sound smart. So
yeah, and we watched all the crazy old Torso and I don't know, this it was a long time ago.
Zombie 2 was that one of them?
That wasn't. I mean, that's on my list. That's okay. That's Fulci. But that's and I think he'd be into that too. But it's a little bit of a different category. but absolutely, fighting a shark, and I mean, that's classic. Yeah, so there was this contest for a radio station up in Kansas City, which is like, that's one of the closer big cities to where I live. And it was like, make a commercial for us, and they put sound effects and like logos that you could use in your commercial. And I had this idea where a guy like puts all these like musical, like a microphone and a drumstick and stuff into a blender and like blends it up and then drinks it, and then he pukes it out and it like forms the logo for the radio station. And I called my friend that I knew was into horror movies and stuff, and I was like, well, he's also a huge David Lynch fan.
Oh dear.
Yeah, his son's name is actually Sailor, which is after the Nicolas Cage character in Wild at Heart. But and I said, you know, I think you could be my Jack Nance, which is the guy who played Eraserhead, and that was, you know, and he was it. So so we shot that commercial, and then he's like, well, you know, if we're going to do some stuff, I've got some ideas. I've got this, let's make a slasher like Giallo's thing. And so that's where Keepsake came from. It was his concept. We kind of co-directed it. He had no experience making anything. So I pretty much did everything, but he was like right there, sort of like over my shoulder saying yes or no. And so and that's, you know, the type of filmmaking I did at the time was, I did everything. I was the cameraman. I set up the lights. I, you know, did the sound and the, you know, which I did, you know, enjoy. And that's like kind of the Robert Rodriguez, you know, school of filmmaking back in the day. And he's a hero of mine. But, you know, I have since, you know, worked on some real shoots, and I do appreciate and understand the value of a good crew. Now.
So let's slide ahead to modern day. What do you want to go through your movie list first, or do you want to talk talk about what you got coming up at the end? Where would you rather do it?
I don't know. I'd say I think we might as well kind of
finish up with the movie stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. Tell me. Yeah. So what are you doing right now, and what you're, and I've got a couple questions I want to ask you from the audience too, but what's your latest project you're doing right now?
All right. Well, so I basically took like a 10 to 12 year hiatus from filmmaking, and I started I got into the property business. And I've got a bunch of rental properties now. I also started a coffee shop. I started a farmer's market. I've just been a serial entrepreneur over the last, you know, 15 years.
Which, not to interrupt, but we'll have you back at another point to talk about all your entrepreneurial ventures if you're up for it. So. Oh,
sure, absolutely, yeah, and you know, and where it's like, you know, because the filmmaking was a passion. It was, you know, I loved doing it, but I never made any money doing it. So I was like, you know, I saw some opportunities, you know, doing this stuff, and this is, you know, actually worked for me. So now I actually stepped away from the coffee shop in December of last year. And actually the year before, I had told myself I'm going to get back into making one way or another, you know, and that year actually I helped another friend of mine make a film, kind of similar to how I'd done it before, where she had no experience and I kind of was a consultant and, you know, helped it get made. And then I just kind of kept my eyes open and just happened to.
It's okay.
You know,
we love animals here. We just said that. Yeah, no worry.
And I started seeing these opportunities, and now I've actually got, you know, a budget to work with. So I have started entering into it from the producer side, because also all the technology's changed, you know, like cameras are all different. The distribution's all different, you know, editing software, everything that I knew is now different.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, I'm just going to get on some sets. I'm going to, you know, talk to the camera crew, talk to the, you know, I don't know, try to, you know, approach it from this direction. And then, you know, maybe within the next 2 years or so, I'll probably start producing my own stuff again. But yeah, so I just, in September, I produced my first film. We went out in LA, actually. I shot it. It was a short, but it's great. It's kind of a comedy, silly comedy with a sci-fi twist. If you're familiar with Netflix shows, it's kind of like Kimmy Schmidt meets Black Mirror.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's great. The script is great, and it's like a bunch of UCB alums, like younger people that have gone through, if you know, the Upright Citizens Brigade, like school, like improv school program. It's just, I guess I won't get too much into it, but we shot the whole thing in 4 days, and it was just awesome. It was like the most professional crew I've ever worked with, and the strike's going on, right? So this being a micro budget, it kind of was a gray area. So we actually got like super talented people that were just needed to work. And so we got people that I'm sure we never would have gotten if not for the strike.
That's really cool. I mean, it is what it is, but yeah.
Yeah, like our cinematographer, the director, like everybody was just amazing. So that was an awesome experience. And I think it's going to be an awesome movie. I hope it should be any time. I'm hoping to see a cut of it. The editor said it'd take about a month. The producer said, maybe 3 or 4 months. So we'll see. Maybe shortly after the beginning of the year.
And I mean, I get what do you do with a short nowadays? Is it still just out to film festivals, or?
That's a good question.
Yeah, go ahead.
That was one of my questions, and I don't know that I got a satisfactory answer to it. Like, film festivals, from what I've been told, are pretty dead these days. Like, it's not really, back in the old days, you'd make a movie, it'd go to festivals, you'd get hype. There'd be distributors who would go there to try to find new movies, to buy them and distribute them. And now everything just goes onto online, or you have to have a connection. And actually, that's one thing, our producer, she actually worked for Netflix. So I'm hoping we might have a foot in the door there. But yeah, so there is going to be some shopping around, but I think it's going to be a little more online, and the people that wrote it are writing a feature length version. So if
that seems one of the stepping like Lights Out. That was one that started as a short, turned into a feature length. The serial killer that can't see, what was his played by really good old character actor. Anyway, that was also a short that was turned into a full length feature length. So that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. And then you kind of implied you have another horror movie coming up, do you?
Yes, and this is one that it's one of the things I'm most excited about, because it's like straight out of my childhood. And the guy is a writer-director down in Florida, and I actually did clear with him. He said it's cool that I can talk about a little more detail in this one. But it's a love letter to 80s horror and metal, because he's also a musician. And the script is amazing, and it's pretty ambitious. But I think of course, I'm hoping it's going to be, the next, Blair Witch or whatever. But it's got some. Yeah, well, actually, I'm not sure how much I should say, but it's comedy, horror. Sure. It's going to have some really cool practical monster effects, and
wonderful.
And all practical effects. That's part of the ambitious part.
So what does I don't know if you can get into numbers, but what does a micro budget horror film, what do they earmark for a budget for something like that nowadays?
Well, I think there is. I think there's a technical limit to what's micro budget, and I think it's 20,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's actually is pretty small. Which, I mean, back in the day, that would have been a lot for me. The films I was making, but yeah, the one we did out in LA, it was kept it under the micro budget level. As I understand it, I left that up. So this is something I've learned too, because back when I was doing my filmmaking, I didn't have a producer. Sure. I was the producer, I guess. So I didn't really understand the technicalities of that stuff. And I guess there's like the producer, there's the executive producer, associate producers, all these levels. And my understanding is the producer, that's the person that like puts it together. the executive producers who like just basically just put some money in, you know.
Right.
They might have some pull with, you know, and the big names when, you know, Steven Spielberg executive produces, you know, he can bring, you know, Tom Hanks into your movie or whatever. And that's the value of a powerful executive producer beyond the money. But I can't remember why I brought that up, but
We were just talking about budgets. That's all. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah. So, I mean, I think I've heard people say anything under 10 million is considered low budget now.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. Totally. I get that because I mean, and there's, man, I could go 1,000 ways with this conversation with you. That's why I brought him on, guys, is because sometimes I don't have time to talk to people I consider friends at events. And so we can do it live here so you can enjoy it. But the middle budget, the medium budget films are completely disappeared now too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something, well, I think I don't even know anymore. Like I was going to say, I think that's kind of what Blumhouse was doing.
Yes. Yeah.
They were, you know, I don't know, but they were probably spending 30 million or you know, I mean, those Paranormal Activity movies didn't cost much. Was that Blumhouse? Or is that?
No, that's James Wan.
Okay. He was his own. I can't
remember what the name of his is, but yes. Yeah. And, yeah. Cause the people in the, CJ, this is Christopher. He said 20K is insanely small. Yes. Cause wasn't Clerks made for around, no, it was more than that even, wasn't it? In the 90s, Kevin Smith's Clerks. Do you remember?
Oh yeah.
What did he, I forget, it was credit cards for him too, but it was, I want to say maybe 30 or 40,000, maybe. I can't remember.
I think it was something like that.
Blair Witch was what? 50 or 100? No, was it? I don't know. It doesn't. I'll look it up and I'll be completely wrong. But CJ says 10 million sounds more reasonable for low budget. And that's what I love about horror is that they're some of the only films making bank right now because they're coming out with 10 and $20 million budgets. And then when this one that was made by an Australian YouTuber, The Hand. It's not called The Hand, but Becky and I went and
Talk to Me.
Such a good film. And it was made for $2 million, I think.
Wow.
So they filmed speaking of Robert Rodriguez, here you go. El Mariachi. I was going to see if anybody even knew that film. So
yeah. And and like I said, you know, Robert Rodriguez, I've, you know, seen all those movies. I've watched all the, you know, commentary tracks and the 1 minute film school and read his book. And, you know, that was,
I'm going to ask you this. I don't know if anybody else has. Okay. Have you ever seen Four Rooms?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was so glad nobody else has ever seen it. And it's one of my favorites. It's got, Tarantino and a Robert Rodriguez film. And I can't remember the other two directors, but the entire, Jeremy's seen it too. That makes me happy. But there were so many good films in the 90s, man, that were just, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, of course, Tarantino and Rodriguez have collaborated. You know, I think that was their first collaboration. And of course, they did Grindhouse and with Planet Terror, and they
did the vampire movie might have been before that.
I thought, I wasn't sure. From Dusk Till Dawn, right?
Yes, Dusk Till Dawn. They would have been very close. So
yeah, and which I love that too. I love the genre shift in there. You know, but actually, and that's sort of, you know, my master plan, my kind of, you know, my delusion of grandeur is to the Robert Rodriguez kind of, he basically created his own film industry, you know, in Austin, you know, right? Like my understanding is he still, you know, produces and mixes his own music in his garage loft and like does a lot of his own effects and green screens and stuff. And outside of the studio system, outside of the, you know, the unions and you know, and that's kind of, that's been like kind of my fantasy that, you know, kind of got derailed when I went off to make money. But you know, I'm hopefully going to try to do. And another one is Peter Jackson, you know, same sort of thing, you know, just in.
Nobody thinks of him as over the top horror guy, but that's where he got his start with. Oh man, I'm having a rough night for Remember Movies, but the one has two different titles, and it's the one that had the record for the most blood.
Yep, Dead Alive or Brain Dead.
Thank you. There, see, I'll just bring up these random facts, and you can fill in the pertinent information there for me.
Yeah, And even before that, he did one called Bad Taste that was like his Evil Dead. You know, it took him 5 years to make it, I think, and it's actually really good. I mean, you could tell he's a visionary, you know, from the very beginning, and it has like amazing gore and just gross out stuff, and it's just, I don't know, it's worth trying to find if you can. Bad Taste.
Another one for you before we'll move on. I got to get to your list next, but
Oh yeah,
you ever see the film Curdle? Yeah,
is that the one with the lady? It was a character from
Pulp Fiction,
yes.
and she cleans up. Yeah. No, I don't. You mention it, and people are like, "Does that really exist?" But yeah, she was a crime scene cleaner, and she was obsessed with, what was it, decapitated heads talking or whatever. It's a great movie, and I'm pretty sure Tarantino produced it or had a hand into it, but it's not listed on his films, you know. So
I miss, you know, there was a lot of interesting stuff in the 90s, like all the independent stuff, like another one kind of like that was Perdita Durango, very obscure. I know hardly anybody's heard of it, but and it's one of the side characters from Wild at Heart.
Really?
I think she was, I can't even remember which character it was. I think she was like an assassin or something in that movie that was trying to hunt down Nicolas Cage's character. And it is a crazy, surreal, violent thing.
All right, I got 2 questions from the audience. Let's see if we can do them each in about a minute, because I want to give you like as long as we can for your list, because you got a good list. I know you do. So, all right, we got 2. First one, what is your opinion on remastering old films?
I think it, well, I mean, I guess, okay, I'll try to keep this short. I don't have any necessary, well, okay, if it's a George Lucas re-edit,
On
it's like, yeah, like I don't really like, changing plot points, but I don't mind sprucing up the effects or sound effects or something like that. But like that's something, I guess, Disney Plus has been doing, like going back and like inserting stuff and Netflix and some of these streaming stuff. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like it's cheating, they're changing history, but I'm not totally in favor of it. I think, rebooting films, I think, is almost always a bad idea. If that's
pretty rare. My film professor in university said, he goes, why are they always taking good films and remaking them? Why don't they go back and take shitty films and try to remake them into a better film? It's like, okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah. Well, like The Crazies by George Romero. Like, I wouldn't say it's a shitty film, but it's not one of his best. But the premise, I thought, was great. And they remade it 15 years ago or whatever. And I remember reading an interview with the guy that was remaking it. And I always thought, like, what's the scariest thing? Well, I thought the martial law crackdown, like that was the element that I thought could have been explored for like some interesting, unique horror. And that's what the director was saying that he was going to be doing in the remake. But it just ended up being a dumb zombie movie instead, and it's like, well,
I'm sure the studio got involved in it, and I'm actually kind of partial to the remake. I do like it, but only because it kind of stands on its own. I watched it before I knew it was a remake of an old one, which happens quite often, And
I might have been overly critical because I was a huge Romero nerd, so I probably should go back and see it again.
I enjoy it, and to be honest, I like some of the Wes Craven remakes too, or I guess the maybe not just Wes Craven, but the exploitation movies like I Spit on Your Grave and Last House on the Left. Those remakes, even Hills Have Eyes remakes, I was like, yeah, I'll take it, But I didn't grow up on 70s horror either, right? So these were my first exposure to them were the early 2000s, and so like I kind of dug them,
Yeah. Well, and I do have some of that. I'm a little bit of a purist on some, like. You guys talked about fast zombies, and I'm not a fast zombie guy. I did enjoy 28 Days Later, but they were rage monsters, not zombies.
I knew somebody would bust my balls. I was waiting for somebody to say,
I'm that kind of nerd, It's Frankenstein's monster.
Yes, it's not Frankenstein. And this one, I don't know if but I thought we'd add. Kodak stopped making film because of the silver costs. or was there more involved in that? Or I'm not sure.
I'm not. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of it. I think the film industry kind of just moved away from film because it was so much cheaper.
Sure.
And so much quicker, like you could shoot and watch everything. You didn't have to send it off to be developed. You didn't have to get a print back. Editing was quicker and cheaper. Like that was like Kevin Smith, like Clerks. I bet probably 75% of his budget went to just film.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Like
And I
he
mean,
could have made that
did
movie for $3,000.
black and white, but still, I mean, but like you said, now dailies are instant. There's none of this, send it away to get it developed, and then let the executives watch your dailies that night. You can pretty much, I assume it's all just uploaded to the cloud at this point anyway. So
yeah, well, the shoot that I did, in LA, last month or whatever. Yeah, I guess the editor was on the set and he was editing like while we were shooting.
Goodness, that's so weird.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to your list, Will. So we're an hour in already. So you guys know we're in for a night. And as long as you're good to go, I'm good for, we can go for another hour if you're up for it. So depending on where your list is at, and we'll see where we go. So
all right, let me get this.
Now I'm going to warn you folks. I'm going to guess that there are going to be some obscure ones on here, and I'm going to learn some good horror films from you as well, because I've dabbled a bit in some of the obscure, but maybe not. I haven't. I definitely am not a connoisseur of the video nasties from the 80s, from that kind of stuff. And if you don't know what the video nasties were, look it up. But it was a thing that Britain implemented back in the day. So,
right, yeah. And I don't know. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. Like I have weird. Like I've seen a lot of like really strange, obscure stuff, but I also have like gaping holes in my filmography. Or resume or whatever you want to say. I've never seen Gone with the Wind. I've never seen like, speaking of Jimmy Stewart, I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life. Like,
wow.
Like I don't know. It's weird.
That's okay. I'm going to ask you right now, what's your favorite film of all time? Let's get that out of the way.
Oh geez. I never know what to say. It's always it kind of depends on my mood, I guess. Like I'd say at one point I would have said Richard Linklater's Slacker, just because I love the way it came together, and I was obsessed with that for a while. I had his the script. What are they made like a picture book with the script in it and kind of a production diary, and I just thought that was so amazing. I love like Rushmore, Wes Anderson. I think that's like a fairly perfect movie. And just probably for like nostalgia purposes, the original Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know. I'm just kind of all over the place. I just love everything.
All right, go ahead. Get into your list. Where are we at here? Okay,
so I'll just start at the top, and we've already touched on several of these. But I had the first one that came to mind was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the second one, which I mentioned being one of my first memories of film. Actually, I went and saw the second one with Joe Bob Briggs. He came to the Alamo Draft House in Kansas City a few years ago, and went up there and met him and took in a screening of that on the big screen. That was pretty awesome.
He's a cool dude. I mean, I obviously have never met him. I'd love to interview him, but he's not getting any younger.
No. Yeah, he definitely, it was a long day for him. I got the impression he wasn't too talkative after the movie, but he's another one. I've read a couple of his books, and I'm a big fan. I used to watch Monster Vision, and even pre-Monster Vision, when it was on the movie channel, I think he had a show just called Joe Bob's Drive-In. I think it was even better. But anyway, and then I'll just keep moving along. Well, so Peter Jackson, we talked about Peter Jackson. So Bad Taste, Dead Alive, but also I think one that people kind of, I don't know why. I think I know why. It was probably too dark for a general audience, but The Frighteners gets overlooked a lot.
Really? And because that was a huge, I remember it was put out, it was promoted everywhere. And that was Michael J. Fox, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of yours. You enjoy that one?
Oh yeah. I just, well, and Jeffrey Combs too. We talked a little bit about Reanimator, I think, before we started recording, and actually, that he's another one met him at a film festival. They did a screening of Reanimator, and he was there talking about it. And yeah, he's just he's such a great actor. He's so fun. But yeah, that's just such a crazy, cool movie, and it's just, and also I just love seeing the development of the filmmaker. I love that story of Peter Jackson just with his friends doing this super low budget thing, and just kind of, you just see him like progress, and the ideas and the technology, because of course Weta, his effects studio is one of the biggest in the world too. And
I really enjoy his documentary stuff now. I actually, because he, whatever you want to think, but I would not call the Hobbit movies classics.
No.
But the World War I colorized film that he did, have you seen that? It took footage from World War I, and then they colorized it using his technology. So good. I'll look up the title while you're giving the next bit of your list. And then he just recently did one on the Beatles, which I haven't seen yet, but I want to see that.
Yeah, that I was very close to watching that, but I still haven't got to it yet.
So what do you got next for us?
Okay, well, kind of similar is Evil Dead / Sam Raimi. Another example of that. Independent filmmaker just having fun with his friends and just finding success, and of course, and again, Bruce Campbell. He's just,
I love him.
Yeah. He's another guy. I met him at a book signing thing, and he took a moment out. He waited. It was like 3 hours after the event. He took a couple minutes with every single person to chat. And he's just a cool guy, just as genuinely charismatic, and seems like a great guy. But also with Sam Raimi, you guys mentioned Drag Me to Hell in that last episode, but I don't think anybody mentioned, I'm pretty sure that's a Sam Raimi movie. It was kind of his return to like actual horror after doing Spider-Man and all that.
Which is so weird that Evil Dead does Spider-Man. When he was doing it, I completely glossed over it. Then I went back. I'm like, holy shit, that's Evil Dead. Yeah. And you can, if you go back to like Evil Dead 2, there's some like really cool like camera movements and stuff. He just has this, and he did it a little bit in that what was it, the Benedict Cumberbatch Marvel movie. Yeah. The oh my God, what a night. I want to say something in time it was called, but it's Doctor Strange. There we go.
Yeah, the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
And I was pretty disappointed in that, because they said, oh, it's the first actual horror movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's like, no, it wasn't. but I had another thing about Sam Raimi, but I think and also I guess, and on the other hand, you can go back, and he also made Darkman, which is, I think it holds up pretty well. I saw some of it a couple of years ago. When I was a kid, I thought it was cool, but you can see that a straight line from that to Spider-Man too.
Because Darkman was, how does the story go? He wanted to get the rights to do a superhero film, I think, and he couldn't, or because Darkman was an original property, wasn't it?
I think so.
There's a story behind that, and anyway, so whatever the original, I wish I could find it, whatever the original comic book, it might have been a comic book from the 60s or 50s that he wanted to get the rights to do, and he couldn't, so he made Darkman, which was basically a knockoff of it. So there's a YouTube channel, Red Letter Media. They do deep dives into old films sometimes called Review, and they did that one. So anyway, carry on.
Which I could totally see, because, before Evil Dead, they did a short called Into the Woods, I think, or that was basically, something to try to raise the funds to make the feature. So I think Darkman was him like saying, look, I can do this. I can make a superhero movie.
Absolutely. Money. Yeah. And from what I've heard, it holds up really well. I haven't watched it in years, but I should again. But again, there's so many we could watch.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so this is my first kind of curveball. And I don't really recommend anyone watch it, but I had to put it on my list because it's significant to me. Is Blood-Sucking Freaks. It is a trauma movie.
Oh, here we go. All right,
Yeah,
go ahead.
It was produced by them, but it was I can't remember the director. It may be like Russ Meyer or something. But it's just depraved. It's but the reason it's significant to me, so that friend of mine that I mentioned that was kind of sheltered, this is one, I just saw this at a pawn shop and bought the VHS when I was in high school. Didn't know anything about it. And it was like, it's definitely one of the worst movies ever made, like in every sense of the, it's like, it's poorly made, but also just subject matter wise, there's like almost no redeeming qualities. So, so we loved it. We watched it a bunch of times, and we actually named our band after, there's a dwarf. He's like the Igor character in this movie, and his name is Ralphus, and that was the name of my band. We named it after him.
We have at least one fan, Loco Mike, the Filipino nomad, says Blood-Sucking Freaks is a good one.
All right,
makes me happy. There you go. Nice. And I don't know if you can see it, but I got the movie poster, the cover art up here on the screen right now for people in case they want to get a taste of what it is.
Yeah, there's very little actual blood sucking in the movie. Also, just to be warned, there's some brain sucking through
Trauma
straw.
films were, Anyway, they're their whole own genre. So
right. Well, yeah, and Lloyd Kaufman, the whole trauma, Toxic Avenger, like. That also is part of my childhood. Class of Nukem High, okay, and then Romero, Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead in particular, of course, Night of the Living Dead, but the original Dawn of the Dead was probably my favorite film when I was in high school, and again, I probably need to go back and watch the remake. I was never a big Zack Snyder guy, and the Fast Zombies, and I think I pretty much just dismissed it. I did watch it, but I think I just grumbled through the whole thing because I was, being
I can picture that.
Jerk.
I don't know it. Oh, frig! I just love it. It's one of my all-time favorites. But again, I don't particularly care for the original. Now, the original Night of the Living Dead, I think, is probably one of the best horror films ever made. It's just such a perfect. I put that right up on the shelf with a couple of Hitchcock films for sure. But I don't know. It was just a perfect time for that Dawn of the Dead remake. There was the three fast zombie films there, or everything came out at once. And but I get you totally.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think that was part of it too. I kind of felt like, man, they're oversaturating, but yeah. And actually, and Dawn, and again, I don't know. I saw Ken Foree at a. I used to go to this horror film festival down in Phoenix, and it was amazing. It was. I wish they folded it into the Phoenix Film Festival, so it doesn't exist as its own thing anymore. Now they just show like a couple horror movies each night over the course of like 2 weeks. But this was like a 4-day just horror and sci-fi. 12 hours a day, maybe 14 hours a day. It was like crazy. It was, and like. That's where Jeffrey Combs was there. Ken Foree came in. The Exorcist, the girl.
Yep. I know she was in I think she's in the newest remake that I haven't seen yet.
That's what I heard. She makes a little cameo. But anyway, yeah. I mean, Romero, I love him. Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, even. Again, that's I appreciate it. I like you can see what he was trying to do. But then I think maybe it was pre-recording Return of the Living Dead, which is not actually a Romero, and I mean, this is one that we would rent when I was a small child, 5 years old,
you would be.
because it has humor in it. And it's got the, like the half, I mean, I don't know how much you remember it, but there's the effects were so crazy. Like the half woman with the tailbone flopping on the table, like
acid rain.
Yes, yeah, the punks, the like, just I don't know. And there's a really good documentary about that. And I want to say, what's the guy, Dan O'Bannon?
Dan O'Bannon, that's exactly who it is. And they were,
Yeah.
wasn't he, didn't he have something to do with the original Night of the Living Dead? Weren't they like, I don't know. And maybe not. Anyway, but there's some tie into that. Anyway, that's a whole nother documentary for a whole nother evening.
Yeah. Oh man. And it's on, there's one on YouTube. I watched it years ago about the production because it was a troubled production. They were trying to, I think it was pretty low budget and kind of rough working conditions. Yeah, that's a great one. I don't know. Okay. So you guys veered into one of my favorite horror subgenres, the psychological horror. But one film in that last show,
Ooh.
but I didn't hear anybody mention Jacob's Ladder, which is just one of I feel like it's a great film, just in general, like outside even the horror genre. Are you familiar?
I am, and again, it's one that slipped through my fingers, but a ton of people whom I respect hype it up quite a bit. So I think I need to go back and watch it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I would say so. It's I mean, you don't want to give it away or anything, but yeah, it is. I don't know. It's just a very powerful movie, and it's like I don't even know what to compare it to, but it's one thing. I just love it when somebody can successfully do that. Yeah, the unreliable narrator. He's seeing things you don't know if they're there, and you bring in the the supernatural elements, and it's
like Fight Club, for instance, in a sense.
Yeah, you could say that.
Narrator. Yep.
Yeah, you could say that, but it's it's his sanity unraveling, and demons, and I guess just to stay on that sort of a vibe. I had something else written here. In the Mouth of Madness, I think is another. That's a John Carpenter film that kind of gets overlooked a lot of times, with Sam Neill, who I also, within the Sam Neill vein, Event Horizon is another one that I feel like deserves more love.
Yes, I saw that on VHS back in the day in my friend's living room, and we loved it. And I don't think I've revisited since, but it's starting to get a bit of a cult following 25 years later. So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, but it's got some of the kind of psychological stuff, but also just kind of horrific. The imagery, the production design's amazing on that. But yeah, The Mouth of Madness. If you haven't seen that, I would say push that up on your list. It's got that kind of John Carpenter. I don't know. He's got that magic. It's like you could tell it's like cheap, but but that's like part of the fun of it. Like that's the aesthetic, and it's got kind of a Lovecraftian, it's I don't know. It's
a soundtrack for it as well.
I'm sure he does.
Okay, because I love his stuff. I know it's so cheesy. There's something about that kind of synthesizer. I don't know which. Anyway, I just love, especially his Halloween stuff, was just so good.
Yeah, and I think it's been a long time since I've seen it, but it's like this author that he's got this character that I guess it has some similarities to The Dark Half, but it's a lot better. Okay. Where the characters the book world and the real world start sort of blending, and
so it has some Stephen King kind of tendencies as well. Anytime you're dealing with an author, you almost have to. Yeah.
Yes. And actually, speaking of Stephen King, I don't know if I enjoyed your conversation about him because, of course, I grew up. We watched the It miniseries. We taped it. That was like one of our regular watches. Taped it off the TV. And
how about, I got to ask, how about 1994, The Stand? Did you watch that?
It
came out.
I think I missed part of it. I know I watched the first installment, but I don't think I ever finished it.
So good. I love it. I will watch it once a year. It's like 6 hours with the commercials cut out, and Becky and I will watch it. I mean, I was so disappointed with the HBO The Stand. Anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
so I will watch. It's worth watching once.
Yeah, I wanted to catch the remake. That's a great story. You know, I really enjoy, you know, that the premise. Well, and also like the Dark Tower, which isn't necessarily horror, but have you ever read the Dark Tower books?
I 2 summers ago. So I got a shout out if he's listening, Mike Leonidas or Leos on not Telegram, but Zello. Anyway, we've been buddies for a few years over there, and he's a D&D guy and stuff. And he convinced me to start Into the Dark Tower because I'm not a fantasy guy. And I managed to get into the 3rd book, and I kind of liked it, but it's just, man, I don't know. I love sci-fi. I love horror. You'd think I'd love fantasy, and I just can't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say, I guess I didn't even really think of it as much as fantasy. So did you just start on the 3rd book, or you've read the first 3?
I think, yeah, I made it through. It was the summer I was siding the house, and I got through the first 2 books, and then I think I petered out.
Yeah.
I have this personal philosophy that life's too short to enjoy books or to endure books you don't enjoy. So
yeah,
on I move.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think the 5th book is called Wizard and Glass, and that was almost too much for me, I think. I think I actually stopped reading it, and then I came back to it later. But I don't know. It ties in a lot of the, you know, other elements, in particular the Stand. That plays like a pretty big part of you know, their dimension hopping. But okay, let's see here. Cronenberg. You guys mentioned body horror. You mentioned The Fly.
Yes.
And I love that stuff, you know, but probably my favorite of his, because it also has that psychological unreliable narrator thing, that is Videodrome.
I've never watched, but so, you know, he's Canadian, right?
Yes.
Or at least, yes, which is cool because we don't have that many great directors. So have you seen, he didn't direct this, but he actually acted in it. Have you seen Last Night or The Last Night?
No.
And if you haven't, it's worth finding. I think I found it on YouTube for free. It's an apocalyptic film. It was Canadian. It's got Sandra Oh and a bunch of other kind of semi-recognizable Canadian actors. But there's an unnamed thing happening to the sun. And the entire premise is, what would you do with your life if you had 24 hours to live? Because the world's going to be, and anyway, he's in it. He acts all the way through it, and it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize it was him till almost the end, so it's worth watching if you get a chance.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's always fun. I think he usually has some kind of a little cameo in most of his stuff. Like, but yeah, Videodrome is the premise. Well, James Woods is the main character in all his psychotic lore. He's pretty intense in that one. And Debbie Harry, interestingly enough, is the female lead.
Really?
Blondie. Yeah.
Did not know that. Okay, might be worth watching.
Yeah, and he is a like a TV producer guy, like on kind of a, I guess I'm not sure what it would be. It's like a regional network kind of station, and they have and he does like the late night programming, and he's all about like pushing the violence, pushing the sex. You know, he's like, you know, this is, you know, and he's super into it, and he taps into this like pirate signal, and it's apparently showing like actual like snuff films or something, and he's like, this is the next thing, we got to show this, you know, and then it goes into, there's this cult of the TV thing, and it's like it's like, I don't know, there's body horror enters into it. It's like it's just crazy. It actually has some kind of similar like They Live elements. Like they would actually be kind of a good
double feature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta watch it now. I think you've sold me on it. It sounds like my type of thing. So
yeah, it's very dark. It's pretty bleak. You know, it's not a fun time movie, but it's a good watch.
I grew up in the 90s. There wasn't too many happy endings in those films.
Yeah, and then another Cronenberg movie that I feel like kind of it was his first feature. It's called Shivers, and
I've heard about it but never seen it.
Yeah, I think that's worth watching too. And it's kind of it's this high rise, kind of all in one apartment complex building, and this kind of parasite thing starts infecting people and turning them into like sex zombies. There's not as much sex. It's more violent than sexy, but but it's definitely, I mean, that's kind of a Cronenberg thing too, right?
Sure.
There's like, and of course, I don't know. You have to see it. It's
like most of his films have to be experienced.
Yes. But I feel like that's a good one. And then of course The Fly. It's great. That I actually did a podcast a couple of years ago with my cousin. He does like a show where you watch like a movie and then a panel of people come up with like a sequel. And we did The Fly, even though it has a sequel. We all made alternative sequels to it. I guess that's the idea. It's for movies that got sequels that weren't very good. I guess the idea was to try to make a better sequel.
Okay.
And so I watched that not too long ago, and I was really impressed how well it held up. Do
you want to plug his podcast? Is he still doing it? I'm
not sure if he is. I think he is. It's called The Countdown Showdown, I think.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's something like that.
Right. We'll look it up. If we remember, I'll throw it in the notes after, and if we don't, well, we tried.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I think we touched on Phantasm. I can't remember if it was pre-show or not.
Bit, yep.
Which you kind of came up in the show before, and that's again, I think in terms of directors and kind of like arcs of like, I don't know, just the whole story, even outside of the film, I guess I'm the same way with music. It's like, I can't just enjoy an album. I've got to like be like, oh, this guy played guitar with these guys and he wrote this album and they used to do rock and now they're, whatever. But like the writer director Don Coscarelli, he created this. It's pretty amazing because it's a low budget, very independent, production, and he has managed to kind of create this cult universe. I'm not even sure how many movies there were, but I remember in the like late 90s catching probably number 4, number 5, on cable and just being like, how did they get from the tall man in the mausoleum to the whole world has been like consumed into this other dimension? It's amazingly ambitious. I just love, that he's been able to make a career of that. But he's also done, Bubba Hotep was one of his.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Speaking of Bruce Campbell.
Yep. Plays Elvis in that.
Yeah. And that's a great one. If anybody hasn't seen, I mean, it's very unusual, but it's pretty, it's a fun one. And then there was another one called John Dies at the End that he directed.
That's more recent, isn't it?
Yeah. That was within the last 10 years, I would say.
Yeah. I've seen it. I don't remember it, but I've seen it.
Yeah, it was all kind of twisty, and it was based on a book, I think, or a collection of short stories or something. And I thought it was fun. Like it just kind of unexpected, it was kind of refreshing. And I actually associate that because I think a friend of mine gave me a DVD of that the same time they gave me a DVD of a movie called Pontypool.
So good. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Yes.
It's also Canadian.
Yeah.
Oh, that's been on my. It's a zombie movie that doesn't really show zombies, right? Or almost doesn't show them.
Yeah. Well, and that's okay. And I'm hoping I'm not confusing this, but it's the one where they're in a radio station.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's a mind virus that's transmitted like through the airwaves or something.
I don't remember how it's transmitted. I just remember that he keeps getting reports. So what I love about it is the entire story is told through like the third person narrative, you know, it'll be like the guy on the ground or the guy in the helicopter in the sky, you know, and you're hearing it. So it's a way to do a really cheap budget film, but have a really big scope. And loved it. That's one of my all-time favorites. The guy has a perfect voice for radio. Oh yeah, so good.
Yeah, and right, and that's one thing I love about it too, is like the craft of it, you know, because there's a way you can get production value out without spending a lot of money, or you can create that scope, you know, if you just do it smart, you know, the way you shoot it and the, you know, and just sort of, which I guess that kind of maybe, or
I was just, so 28 Days Later, one of the best scenes in the movie doesn't actually get shown. It's when he's telling the story about how he's separated from his parents and he climbs on top of a pop machine and the zombies surge in. It's never filmed, but he tells this story about how it happened. And to me, it was a way to create this massive scene that never actually happened. And I still picture it in my head. Same type of thing. I always love that in film when they can get away with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and classically, I mean, Jaws, you know, that was one of the things, you know, they always talk about the shark kept breaking down. They had initially planned to show it eating people and it, you know, but it didn't work. So they just it made it more suspenseful. It probably made it a better film.
Oh, for sure.
And then another, you know, kind of textbook example is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the meat hook. When Leatherface goes to put Pam on the meat hook, it's edited. You see the hook, you see a front shot of him approaching, you know, you see it behind her, him walking toward it. He lifts her up. It's all, you know, reverse shots. You don't actually see it, but there's a sound effect. There's no blood, you know, but you see it in your mind. Like everybody thinks they saw that hook like penetrate her back, but it's not there. You know, it's just, I love that stuff. It's just genius. Well, and that's kind of Hitchcockian too, you know, and he probably just did it for budgetary reasons, you know, like, cause they probably couldn't afford a prosthetic or whatever. But it just better.
100%.
Okay. And then, so here's, a director that I'm a big fan of and it's more contemporary and actually an actor I'm a big fan of. The movie in particular that introduced me to both of them is called Murder Party. You ever heard of it?
I don't know if I have. Maybe. Fill me in.
Let's see. I think I'd say it came out in about 2017. No, 2000. Was it 17? No. Oh no, 2007. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting my decades. Yeah. 2007, 2006, 2008, somewhere in there. It's this guy, Jeremy Saulnier, I think is how you say his name, or Saulnier. I don't know. He has since he did a movie called Blue Ruin, another one called Green Room, and then another one that was a Netflix movie. Yeah, Green Room, with the punks and the...
Green Room was on my top film list of the year. I think it was like 2015 or something. I had Anton Yelchin there before he passed away. Patrick Stewart. Oh, such a good film. Anyway,
yeah, amazing. Yeah. And so Jeremy Saulnier, he's the, I believe, writer-director on all those. And Murder Party was his first feature, and he kind of has his, you know, stable of actors. Well, and kind of his main guy appears to be this guy, Macon Blair, he's like one of my favorite actors, like right now. But he's just not, you know, he hasn't really broken that big, but he plays, so Murder Party, the premise I love because I had been to art school, and the premise is it's these art school kids. Well, I mean, this guy just blowing down the street, he finds this invitation to a murder party, and it just says, be here at this time. And he's like, okay. He makes himself a costume out of like a cardboard box, and he goes. And the art school kids are like serious. Like, this is an artistic, you know, it's a piece. It's an art piece. They're going to actually murder somebody at this party. And they're like, you know, well, if you're dumb enough to you know, come to something called a murder party, you deserve to die, you know, that kind of thing. So it has a kind of a dark humor. But the thing, I thought the writing and the casting, like the characters, it's like I knew all these people from art school. They're like perfectly cast and performed. and so pompous and so like self absorbed. But it's also like grueling. The gore, the violence, like that's something that he does so well, which I would say is kind of like it's like Cronenberg does that, where it's that visceral, like
Sure.
like, and also I feel like Guillermo del Toro is one that does that very well, who we haven't talked about yet, but like in Pan's Labyrinth, there's like that part where the guy's like bashing the guy's face with the with the gun, and then another one that I remember from Guillermo del Toro is in The Devil's Backbone, which is one of his. I think it was right before Pan's Labyrinth. The guy gets stabbed in the under the arm, like in the armpit, and in the commentary, he's talking about like I like to stab people in the armpit because, or it's like because you actually feel that it's not like a flesh wound on the bicep. It's like that makes you cringe, right? And there's an art to that, and I feel like Jeremy Saulnier, and like in Green Room, you could probably remember there's some stuff like that, right? There's some like horrific, he doesn't glorify the violence. He's like, you don't want it, but it's interesting. It's not. It gives right. I don't know. I always get like kind of a. I don't know. It's much more impactful.
A physical reaction. There's only a few movies I've had like that, but I get it. I was just thinking of Bone Tomahawk. Have you seen that one?
A friend of mine was just watching that yesterday, and that's another example of exactly what I'm talking about. Like
where they hold on to it, and thank goodness that the MPAA doesn't require edits like they did in the 80s, because we wouldn't get stuff like that.
Yeah, and I meant to look up who made that, because that was so well done, and it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it had Kurt Russell, and I mean, like whoever did that had to have gone on and done more cool stuff.
I think he did. What is it? There's I'm going to look it up right now, but I think he did a movie with Vince Vaughn in prison. I want to say like Drag Across Concrete or something. Let me see if I can find it here. I'll find the director. You go ahead. Yeah, it was the director was S. Craig Zahler, and he did Brawl in Cell Block 99, and which was great. But he also had anyway, he's a good director.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think Dragged Across Concrete was another one, and then they put Hell and High Water and Green Room in similar types of movies, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and I would say Blue Ruin. I'd put that high on the list too, but that's like it's like a character study. Like it's Macon Blair. Basically, he's trying to get revenge for his sister, and he just bumbles the whole thing. It's like, I guess the idea of like, if just the average guy that doesn't actually have any skills is just like out for like gruesome revenge, but he just doesn't know what he's doing, and I don't know. It's actually it's a little bit of a rough watch, but it's powerful.
Okay. What else you got on your list for us?
All right, let's see here. Well, I guess. Oh, okay. Here's one that I was curious if you'd seen, because it's one of these movies that I bring it up sometimes and nobody seems to have ever heard of it. It's called May. Like it was in the, I think probably early 2000s. Yeah, May.
I don't think so. I always like hearing about films. I'm going to put it into IMDb while we're talking here.
Yeah, and I thought it was great. The lead actress, I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else, but she was amazing. And Anna Faris was in it. I think it was maybe around the time that Scary Movie came out. And it's like May is this woman that she's sort of, she wants to build sort of a Frankenstein monster lover type creature. It's just kind of fun to see a woman in that role instead of a creepy guy.
I bet you my wife, I bet you Becky has seen that. She's seen more than I have, and that seems like that'd be right up her alley. I'll have to check with her after, because I haven't seen it, but I bet she has.
Yeah. Okay, then I guess just a couple memory lane. Oh wait, no. Okay, Fast Zombies. Okay, maybe to I'm not totally against Fast Zombies. There was a show on Netflix called Black Summer, I believe.
Mhm.
It was a series, and they had Fast Zombies in that, and I actually did enjoy that. Did you see that?
I did. It's a spin-off of something Z. What was that called?
Oh, really? World War
Yeah.
Z?
No, not
Oh,
World War Z. It
Dave.
was another one. It was really cheesy from Sci-Fi,
Yeah.
and somehow they're tied in. But Black Summer, yeah, Black Summer had the actress from My Name Is Earl in it, I think.
Yes. Jamie Presley. Or
Jamie
Jane.
Presley. Yeah, the one that all look the
James
same. There's
King.
3 or 4 actresses that all look the same. She's one of them.
Is it King? James King? Maybe not
Yeah, I
Presley?
knew my daughter, if she was still listening, would know because she's a huge My Name Is Earl fan. But yeah, that wasn't bad. It was I could handle that for sure.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah. And any others on your list?
80s horror comedy type stuff. Again, stuff that I grew up at loving. House 2.
Okay. Yep.
Critters. And Critters 2.
How about Tremors?
Tremors, oh, for sure. Absolutely. That stands above.
It's probably my favorite. Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and just the cast and stuff too, like so perfect. Well, like Reba McEntire and the Family Ties guy, like so it's just everything. That was just perfectly, cast and written, just so much fun.
The script, everything. It is a perfect. And I only saw it for the first time maybe 7 years ago, and I've probably seen it a dozen times since. It is. I don't know if you could maybe Shaun of the Dead, but a better horror comedy, if you want to call it that. I mean, it was just it's weird to say, but the chemistry between Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, perfect. The way they played off each other, that was perfect movie.
Yeah, right. And the effects were good, and it was great. Yeah. That was like probably one of the, well, I don't know. I want to say it feels like that was like shortly before things started going more CGI. I bet the sequels started incorporating CGI in there, but like all those.
What do you want to call it? An Easter egg, but there's an audio clip from that movie that Bert, what's his name? The prepper in it. Anyway, he's in my intro, my podcast intro. The very last voice clip is from him. And where he's like, I forget how many gallons of water and so many days of food. And I was like, yeah, that's so perfect. But I love that movie.
Yeah, there was something else in your intro I was going to bring up. There was a that I appreciated the reference.
Was it from Twilight Zone? Monsters on Maple Street?
No, it wasn't.
And well, it might have been Panic at Year Zero. That's in there as well. That's probably my favorite early apocalyptic prepper movie. There's also Spock, Leonard Nimoy from the Y2K documentary. I can't believe I can remember all these. It was a full day last year putting it together, but I was so happy with the ending of it. But yeah,
that's fun. I like it. It's good. Well, and I guess I just made a note on Critters 2. Actually, was directed by Mick Garris, who did The Stand. I believe he did the original Stand miniseries.
Oh, okay.
And he also did Hocus Pocus, the original Hocus Pocus. Or he wrote it anyway.
I'd only seen the first time 3-4 years ago, and I really enjoyed it. Had never seen it before.
Yeah, I tried to watch it last year. I'd never seen it either, and I feel like it's intended for preteens or something. It's kind of how I felt about it. Like I missed it in the 90s, and I just felt like it wasn't for me anymore.
I went to it was our local theater, and they had a trivia night where everybody dressed up in a costume. So maybe that added to the mystique of it, but I really, really enjoyed it. So White had put it, Burt Gummer, that's his name, the prepper from Tremors.
Yeah. And then I guess along Motel Hell is another great 80s.
Oh, yes. That's not bad. It's been a while since I've seen that one too, but yes. What about, did you happen to see Terrifier 2 this year?
No, I haven't seen Yeah, no, I haven't seen any of the Terrifier stuff.
So I hadn't seen the first one, and the second one it was they raised money using Kickstarter, and it become this huge kind of pop culture zeitgeist thing. And so I was like, all right, we got to watch it. Now Becky didn't like it, but it's another one of those like creepy, makes your skin crawl kind of like just really balls to the wall horror and violence, and gore. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed it, but I think I liked the soundtrack more. Huh. And the soundtrack was done by the guitarist for Marilyn Manson. And so I went online. I'm like, oh, anyway, it wasn't available. I ordered it through another Kickstarter where they, how they do that with vinyl now, where you pay ahead of time and then they'll print them. So I got it, and I listen to that all the time. It's really good. Mm-hmm. So if you get a chance, because I know you like practical effects and, ultra gore, it's worth watching for that alone. Yeah.
I've heard both sides of it. Like I know people that love it, and I know people that hate it, that just think it's over the top and nothing. But it's like, that's what I mean.
He needed an editor. I think he edited his own film. A lot of guys, that ends up happening. They kind of they believe their own hype, and I get it. But it didn't need to be like 2.5 hours long. It would have been really good at like an hour 40. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was just having a conversation about that regarding, both George Lucas and Tim Burton. Not specifically. Basically, they, I think in the case of Tim Burton, I feel like he needs somebody to rein him in a little bit.
Oh, nowadays. I wish Tim Burton would go back and make 1980s Tim Burton films.
Yes.
They were so good. What happened? How do you go from making Edward Scissorhands to making Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? And if 1980s Tim Burton made Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it'd be awesome. But whatever the hell that disgrace was absolute hot dog shit. It was so bad.
Yeah, right. And I think that's what it is. Back then, I feel like what I said is I feel like he'd be right now. He'd be better off just being like a production designer, because he still has, he's visually interesting.
Yes.
Stuff. But I think in the early days, he had the vision. He had the way he wanted everything to look and be. But he also had to answer to a producer and a studio. And then he, became, so successful that he didn't have to answer to anybody, and this is what happens.
A really good example of that. I don't know if you ever watched it, but Sons of Anarchy. Did you ever watch that?
No, I didn't.
So Kurt Sutter, he really got huge off that show. And the first two, you can watch as the seasons go on. The episodes get longer and longer and longer, and they were all taut, and sharp and to the point. The first 2-3 seasons. By the final season, you knew he's like, hey, I've got, I got lightning in a bottle here. You can't do anything about it. And so they would go from being a 40-minute episode to being like almost 2 hours. And they were just, dude needed an editor, and he needed a producer saying, sorry, buddy, you got to rein this in a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's something, well, like I was saying earlier about, filmmaking stuff, I think that's part of appreciating the team. That's something years ago. So where I live, it's a pretty rural area, not a lot of filmmaking happening. And I'm just too stubborn to go anywhere, where I could actually do something. But I started a club to just see who was around that would come in and, collaborate. And kind of along with that, I started kind of thinking about the, I don't know, I wrote like a manifesto about filmmaking and everything, but just like I've always, once I started thinking about it, just the magic, the synergy of, filmmaking is the only art form that incorporates every other art form.
Sure.
Like music, from music to photography, makeup, painting, literally every single art form is represented. Huh. And as a producer or a director, I believe that a good director, their job is to find the right person for each of those roles, not to micromanage, and I think this is applicable in business too. And you just find the right person, put them in the role, and let them do what they do best. Because I don't want to, I don't want to, I hire an accountant because I don't want to do that stuff. It's like they're going to find those what do you call that?
The skilled professionals, the people who can do the job better than you can, so it can free you up to do the things you want to do, I'm guessing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And not only free me up, but it makes the overall product better because you've got all these people like pursuing their passions, like under the umbrella of the overall production. As long as, you give them, of course they do require a little direction, but to make sure that no people aren't going off on their own tangents, but yeah, like that's what I love about filmmaking is like being on the set of the short we shot. I just kind of was hanging around and one of the writers was talking to the costumer and I wish I could remember it, better, but she was like, showed him her iPad with a dress on it. And it's like, is this kind of what you're thinking? And he's like, no, more, I was thinking it's like flowery, but not. And she's like, oh, okay. Hot Topic meets, whatever. And she like pulled something else up and he's like, yeah, that. And I was just like, that's awesome. It's like it seems like a small thing, but just having somebody to bounce that off of that can interpret what your vision is and then produce it. It's amazing. Yeah.
That's really cool, man. I think that might be a good spot for us to wind her up. I was like, that's a really good thought to end the show on, and I appreciated this. So so I guess right at the moment you don't have places for social or anything along those lines, at least to follow you with.
Right. Yeah. I just have kind of my personal stuff. I started a new production company because basically all this producing stuff I've been doing has just been within the last like 6 months. And it's all kind of, I'm just dealing with the filmmaker, they're making the thing and they're putting it out or selling it to distributor or whatever. So there isn't really any reason that I'm seeing for anybody to reach out to me. I'm like finding them right now, but it's like, that's kind of the next step, I guess. And I do have, stuff I've shot in the past and actually I am wanting to get back into the technical kind of behind the scenes side of things too. I actually, one of my favorite parts of the process that I feel like I actually was pretty good at is the editing. So I actually have been talking to another production studio about being an editor on something. And in that case, I probably want some kind of a portfolio and I do have stuff out there, but it's all, it's 15 years ago. I don't know that I want that to represent me now.
Time to build a new portfolio.
Yeah. And I think, there's some good stuff that I just need to curate it a little bit more. So I don't really have anywhere that I would send anybody to see me or my stuff.
Well, if people want to reach out to you, they can reach out to me through email and I can put you into contact for sure as well. And
yeah,
for what it's worth, man, I'd love to have you back on if you're up for it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love to talk, as you probably noticed. Yeah.
I just want to, Christopher said, it's always a privilege to listen to someone who is articulate, passionate, knowledgeable, and proficient in their field. Thanks, Tim and Will.
Yeah, wow, I really appreciate that. It's good to hear.
And we'll have to do more movie episodes too, because I love picking your brain, and I think we bounce off each other pretty good. So,
yeah, oh yeah, and and this was just horror. I'm into, I can go into all kinds of genres and directors and minutia.
I would appreciate it. Well, thank you, Will. If you want to hang around in the background for just a second, I'll be right back with you. All right, guys, I hope you appreciated that. That was everything I wanted and then some. So thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for letting me breathe into some of my other passions on this show, because I know, like, it's not just prepping. It's not just entrepreneurship. And I know we go down some different rabbit holes, but it helps me keep it fresh. It helps me talk about things that I love. But more importantly, it lets me bring on people like Will, whom I've met in real life on multiple occasions. We've drank together. We've chatted together. We didn't have enough time, and I wanted to bring him on to share his passions. So, guys, as he grows his portfolio, I will get him back on. We'll get him to share some of his stuff. And before too long, we'll see him on Netflix, Amazon, or maybe on the big screen. How's that sound? So with that, guys, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.